I was wrong for what I did, and every day I sit and think about the damage I caused. The family wants me in prison, but I'm in my own prison for the rest of my life. I understand that I have to be very mindful when it comes down to this, to making decisions and being more, being more aware on choices that have consequences behind them. This situation forced me to sit with myself in a way I never had to before. I had to grow up fast. I had to reflect. I had to reflect on who I am and who I want to be. I know I can't change the past, but I can change how I am moving forward and become a better person than I was before.
I want the max. That's what I want. A life for a life. You get what I'm saying? She took my son's life for no reason. She took my son's life because he was honest with her, that he didn't want to be with her, and she not realizing her actions, her behavior, and her entitlement is the reason why he didn't want to be with her.
It will always be a fact that you are a murderer. You are a demon seed that your parents brought into this world to bring suffering on everybody else. Shame on them.
It's the night of December 20th, 2024. 4 days before Christmas. Miami, Florida. A parking garage in Liberty City, and a 17-year-old boy named Yahkeim Lollar is getting ready to spend time with his girlfriend. He has no reason to be worried. This is someone he knows, someone he trusts. And yet before this night is over, that trust will cost him everything. What happens next will split two families in half and spark a debate thousands of people across the country will weigh in on. Because the girl who killed him will stand before a judge and say it was horseplay, that it was an accident, that she never meant for any of this to happen. But the cameras were rolling. At 10:34 p.m., a camera at the door of the apartment complex picks up Jahara arriving with a friend. The two of them are laughing. They're having fun. The friend is carrying shopping bags. Nothing about this moment looks like a warning sign. It looks like a regular Friday night. 7 minutes later, a second camera picks them up. This time it is Jahara and Keimo together, walking into a stairwell. Keimo is wearing a hoodie. Jahara appears playful. The two of them walk up the stairs together. Nothing about the footage suggests conflict. Nothing suggests what is about to happen 16 minutes from now. Then at 10:57 p.m., Keimo comes back into frame, and Jahara runs toward him. Her purse drops to the ground. That is the last moment those two teenagers were ever in the same frame standing upright. Roughly 2 minutes later, Jahara reappears on camera alone. Her cell phone is in her hand. She dials 911. Police arrive on scene 6 to 7 minutes after that call. Keimo Lollar does not survive the night. And what happened in those 16 minutes, in the blind spot between one camera and the next, is a question that still does not have a clean answer. You're watching True Crime Dark Diaries, where the spotlight of social media casts the darkest shadows. Subscribe if you want the unfiltered truth behind the trending hashtags, because by the time a story explodes online, the tragedy has already happened. Now let's dive in. This story takes us to Miami, Florida, a city that never slows down, a place where the heat does not just come from the sun. It comes from the streets, the neighborhoods, the lives packed tightly into every block. And sitting inside that city is Liberty City, a neighborhood on the northwest side of Miami that has its own pulse, its own history, and its own people who have built lives there for generations. This is not a neighborhood that makes the news for good reasons most of the time. But on the night of December 20th, 2024, it made the news for the worst reason of all. Yahkeim Lollar was 17 years old and a junior at Miami Northwestern Senior High School, one of the most well-known public schools in Miami with a long history in high school football. He played running back for the Northwestern football team and had his sights set on a career as a stockbroker. That combination alone, an athlete with a financial ambition, tells you something about who Keimo was. He was not just moving through life without direction. He had a plan. People who knew him described him as a straight-A student who never got into trouble, did the right thing, played football, stayed in school, and always kept a smile on his face. At his funeral, those who stood up to speak about him did not struggle to find things to say. One person who had known him since childhood recalled meeting him on a football field at just 3 years old, describing the bond they built as a brotherhood that extended well beyond the sport. His mother said he was devoted to his family, loved playing video games, and had a genuine dream of building a future in finance. By every account, Keimo was the kind of teenager whose name you expected to hear again years down the line. Not in a courtroom, not in a homicide report. Before we talk about what happened in that parking garage, we need to talk about who Jahara Malik was before any of this. Because understanding who she was before December 20th, 2024 is the only way to understand how a night that started with shopping bags and laughter ended with a 17-year-old boy bleeding on the ground. Jahara Malik was 17 years old, a Miami teenager. No criminal record, no prior arrests, no red flags that would have made anyone look twice. To the people around her, she was just another girl living her life in Liberty City. And that is exactly what makes this case so difficult to wrap your head around. She and Keimo were in a relationship. Same age, same neighborhood, same circle. These were not two strangers. They were a known couple, two teenagers who had been together long enough that both families were aware of the relationship. On the surface, nothing about that picture looks alarming. But here is where things get interesting. 8 days before Keimo died, he sat down with Jahara and told her the relationship was over. He was done. He wanted out. And according to Keimo's mother, Natalie Jean, that conversation did not go the way Keimo hoped it would. Jean told the court that her son had been completely honest with Jahara about his feelings, and that Jahara's response to that honesty revealed something about her character that Keimo had apparently already recognized. Jean described Jahara as someone with a deep sense of entitlement, someone whose behavior and reaction to being told no was itself the reason Keimo wanted to leave in the first place. So think about that for a second. 8 days before his death, Keimo told Jahara it was over. And 8 days later, the two of them are alone together in a parking garage, and only one of them walks away. Now ask yourself, does that sound like a coincidence to you? On the evening of December 20th, 2024, Jahara had spent part of the day shopping with a friend. Before leaving home, she had looked for her pepper spray, which she carried regularly for personal protection. She could not locate it, and took a knife with her instead. Surveillance footage from the entrance of Keimo's apartment complex recorded Jahara arriving with that friend at 10:34 p.m. The friend was carrying shopping bags from their earlier outing. Nothing in the footage indicated tension or conflict at that point in the evening. 7 minutes later, a second camera recorded Jahara and Keimo entering a stairwell inside the complex. Keimo was wearing a hoodie. The two walked up the stairs together and moved out of frame. 16 minutes passed before either appeared on camera again. At 10:57 p.m., Keimo came back into frame. Jahara ran toward him, and her purse fell to the ground. The two moved out of frame. Approximately 2 minutes later, Jahara reappeared alone with her cell phone in hand and placed a call to 911. Officers arrived on scene 6 to 7 minutes after that call. Keimo had been stabbed in the chest. He was transported to a hospital, where he later died. The post-mortem examination determined the wound had penetrated through his hoodie, shirt, muscle, and fat, clipped his rib, and entered his heart. Responding officers arrived at the apartment complex on Northwest 6th Court shortly after 11 p.m. Malik told responding officers the stabbing was unintentional, stating the two had been horseplaying at the time. She was not arrested that night. Law enforcement processed the scene and collected statements before leaving the location without taking her into custody. Approximately 20 minutes after police arrived on scene, officers spoke with Jahara about what had happened that night.
More than 20 minutes after Jahara stabbed Keimo, Miami police officers spoke to her in that parking garage about what she said happened.
That's why he didn't wake up so he could tell y'all.
Yeah,
Because he didn't. This is okay. He be having nights. We be both having nights. Like when he come to my house, we just do that every time. We get in arguments.
So what? So y'all okay?
So you guys get in arguments and you part of us?
You on? I'm on.
I'm
Lollar.
Come on, yeah. I mean, I already talked to her. Sorry.
And then I had the knife, but I was...
Were you guys arguing before that?
No, we was just over here fighting, and then...
So
you guys are arguing?
Yes, and then, well, we wasn't arguing, we was just like play fighting and stuff, and that's when he was making me mad, and that's when I had the knife right here, and then he ended up running to it, but I'm not thinking, because he already knew I had it, he was trying to get it from me, but he ended up running to it.
Okay. Do you have an ID on you?
No, I don't have no ID.
Do you know your social? Listen,
My last four.
You know your last four? Okay. What? I'm not. Look, we're trying to figure what's going on.
No, like what's going to happen? I just need him to wake up.
I don't know. They're working on him. Okay, just relax. They're working on him.
If he alive, then what?
Huh?
Where we go from there?
We gotta take him to the hospital.
Okay, and then what?
And then we'll just go from there. We'll when he wakes up, we talk to him and everything.
Please, like.
We gotta wait. You're 17 also. Okay, what's your date of birth?
Go, like, I didn't even tell my mom. My mom don't even know nothing.
A portion of her statement to police was redacted from the public arrest affidavit, meaning her full account to investigators was never made available. Surveillance footage captured her dropping the knife in the parking garage before emergency services arrived. Keimo's father, Darvid Lollar, later stated publicly that he could not understand how no arrest was made given what the surveillance footage had already documented. In the weeks that followed, the case remained open without charges filed. It was the medical examiner's formal ruling of homicide, completed several weeks after the stabbing, that moved the investigation toward a criminal charge. Jahara Malik was subsequently charged with manslaughter with a deadly weapon. By that point, the Lollar family had spent weeks waiting for an arrest they believed should have been made the same night their son died. Jahara Malik was charged with manslaughter with a deadly weapon. Her defense attorney argued the stabbing was the result of horseplay between two immature teenagers, and that her decision to carry a knife that night reflected poor judgment rather than criminal intent. The prosecution rejected that position. Prosecutor Kristen Rodriguez pointed directly to the physical evidence. The knife had penetrated Keimo's hoodie, his shirt, muscle, fat clipped his rib, and entered his heart. Rodriguez told the court that a wound of that depth and force was not consistent with an accident, and that the moment Jahara produced the knife, the risk of serious harm was both foreseeable and preventable. In March 2026, Jahara entered a guilty plea to manslaughter with a deadly weapon. There was no formal plea deal. She placed her sentencing entirely in the hands of the court. At that same hearing, Keimo's mother, Natalie Jean, disclosed that her son had told Jahara 8 days before his death that he wanted to end the relationship, a detail that the prosecution argued provided critical context for understanding the events of December 20th. Sentencing took place on May 5, 2026, before Miami-Dade Circuit Court Judge Christine Hernandez. The hearing ran for over 5 hours. Prosecutors requested 20 years in prison followed by 10 years of probation. The defense requested boot camp. Lollar's father, Darvid Lollar, told the court the case had been mishandled from the beginning and that his son had been undercharged. Judge Hernandez sentenced Jahara Malik to 17 years in prison followed by 5 years of probation.
And off the top at 7, we start with some breaking news. A teenage girl who stabbed her boyfriend to death has been sentenced to 17 years in prison. The stabbing happened back in 2024 when both she and the victim were just 17. I'm Jim Barry. CBS News Miami's Yvonne Taylor is your reporter in Miami. He is live in the courtroom where that sentence was handed down just minutes ago. Yvonne.
Jim, no question about the fact that it was a very emotional day. And let's keep in mind that the prosecutors, the state was asking for 20 years in prison for the defendant and 10-year probation. She actually got less. Let's take a listen to the moment when the judge actually read that sentencing.
The court will sentence you to 17 years in Florida State Prison, followed by 5 years of reporting probation. Special condition of that probation, you will have to go a mental health evaluation.
As an additional condition, Malik is required to write a letter every December 20th acknowledging the incident and reflecting on its impact. She was remanded immediately following the ruling. Cases like this one do not stay inside a courtroom. They move through neighborhoods. They move through schools. They move through the people who knew the victim, who sat next to him in class, who watched him play football on Friday nights. Liberty City felt this case. Miami Northwestern Senior High School felt this case. The people who knew Yahkeim Lollar as Keimo, not as a name in a case file. Felt this case in a way that a sentence handed down in a courtroom does not address and cannot repair. Two families entered that courtroom on May 5th, 2026, carrying the same grief and leaving with entirely different verdicts on whether justice was served. Lollar's family had asked for 30 years. His father said the case was mishandled from the beginning. His mother said the sentence fit only because her son was 17 and Jahara would serve 17 years. Malik's family filed notice of a potential appeal before the hearing was over. The broader conversation this case started, about teenagers carrying weapons, about relationships turning fatal, about where the line sits between a reckless decision and a deliberate act, did not end with the sentencing. It continued in the community, online, and among the people who followed this case from the night of the incident to the day the judge read her decision aloud. A 17-year-old boy is dead. An 18-year-old woman is serving 17 years in a Florida state prison. Two families left that courtroom on May 5th, 2026 without resolution, without agreement, and without Yahkeim Lollar. The sentence has been handed down. The case is closed. What happened in those 16 minutes between one camera and the next remains the only thing this case never fully answered. And that concludes today's case. Here at True Crime Dark Diaries, we're committed to digging beneath the surface, giving a voice to those who can no longer speak, and making sure their stories are never lost to time. So don't forget to subscribe, tap the like button, and turn on notifications so you're always first to know when a new story drops. Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and remember, the search for justice always begins with the truth. True Crime Dark Diaries, where every case finds its voice.